Can you just hold those 4?
Absolutely not.
Please.
I'll give you my day rate.
Okay.
Arpad,
Nick?
man, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure's mine, man.
Man, there's a lot of cool things going on here. We'll get to that. Let me ask you something.
Sure.
I'm sure you didn't just wake up one day and start running sound. What got you into doing this? What got you into running sound? What got you into this passion, may I say, doing this? I'm assuming you didn't just, wake up one day and you're on with Chris Stapleton.
Weren't that easy. Like many guys in this position, I'm a frustrated musician. Both my parents played instruments of varying types and at various levels, never professionally. They taught me or had me take piano and guitar lessons at an early age. And by the time I was in my early teens, I realized I just did not have the God-given ability to be a professional musician of the caliber that I respected. But by then I fell in love with music so much that I said, all right, there's got to be some other avenue to stay within that world. And I guess I don't really recall if there was a sudden moment when the penny dropped or it happened gradually, but I realized, oh, there's people that are on the recording side and the live side and things like of that nature. At an early age, my parents and I would go to, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and we would go to the Kennedy Center, the Performing Arts Center. We had season tickets for the opera and the ballet, so we would be there on a very regular basis.
Wow.
So I had an understanding like, oh, okay, there's like a concert thing. And then slowly started to realize like, oh, what are this? Those are little microphones, I mean, those are speakers, and kind of putting it all together bit by bit by bit. And then at some point coming to the realization that, hey, there's guys that kind of do this for bands and studios and on TV and radio who engineer all the music that we hear. And then started investigating that more and more and more, and kind of realized like, oh, okay, this is a real thing, and people actually have real jobs doing it. And my first legitimate job outside of dog walking and snow shoveling was working at a recording studio.
Okay.
That was a small
in DC,
and this was actually in Maryland. This facility. It was a music store called Briggs Music in Landover Hills, Maryland, at the Landover Mall.
Okay, at the mall.
At the mall.
All right.
Music store, and in the back they had a recording studio where it was one big room, then one ISO booth and a control room, and that was it.
That's all you need.
It's all you need. And had an opportunity to work with some people there, and primarily though I was working in the music store, but also helped out a little bit in the studio area, and then things kind of blossomed and progressed from there.
Okay, so fill the gap for me. Running sounds, not at a mall, but close to at a mall.
At a mall.
Chris Stapleton. That's a big jump there.
It's a big jump, and it did take several decades to get there. After working at the recording studio and really in that music store, and still playing guitar, even though I never had any genuine ambitions of becoming a professional musician, I still played music. And the little bands I was in high school and in college, I kind of knighted myself as the audio guy of the band as well, where, I got my parents to buy us a little PA.
Cool.
And that story that has happened a million times all over the planet. Was doing that. And then when I went to college, I ended up studying theater tech.
Okay.
At Maryland University.
Theater background.
Yes.
All right.
Maryland University has a very, very strong theater department. there wasn't a formal audio track
Okay.
for the theater tech program, but I kind of focused what my outside of classroom work at that theater department on the audio aspect. So on the bigger theater productions at Maryland University's tallest theater, I did a lot of the audio for that. And at the same time, I was still playing in a band or I should say I was playing in a band in college by this point, and we did the fraternity party circuit and like the handful of clubs at near Maryland University. The Paragon, that was like the club to play there, which is so funny because there's a analog console known as a Paragon, and that name just can't escape me. It seems. So, did that through college, and then also was writing music for theatrical productions for for shows that I had to direct and produce as part of my curriculum at Maryland, and then also did that for other students that were going through the same program and graduate students, and then did a handful of professional theater audio work and music composition for some of the theaters around DC. DC has a very strong theater community.
That's cool.
And so, that was kind of easy. And also worked with a couple of other bands, working at clubs here and there. Okay. And also ended up having a house gig at a music venue / restaurant. It was probably like a 50-50 split of music venue restaurant. They put equal emphasis on both aspects. So there was for a restaurant, it had a really good PA and console and mic package. But for a music club, it also had an awesome menu.
Cool.
So it was like this cool combination, very rare. And did that for a bit until that place closed down. Nothing that I had nothing to do with that. And then found myself working for this production company that did audio and lighting out of Washington, D.C. called Roadworks, and worked there for a couple of years. And then several of my colleagues from Roadworks migrated over to Clare Brothers, and it just happened one by one, where first Bob came over to Clare Brothers and they liked his work, and Bob said, "Oh, you like my work? You should hire my buddy James." And James came over, and James said, "Oh, you like my work? You should hire my buddy Cam." And Cam came over. Cam said, "Oh, you like my work? You should hire my buddy Timo." And Timo came over, and then Timo said, "Oh, you like my work? You should hire Arpad." And by then, Roadworks has dissolved because actually they didn't fully dissolved because of that, but so that's how I found myself working at Clare Brothers starting in the year 2000. And I moved to Nashville in April of 2000, and by that summer they threw me out on the first Tim and Faith tour, the first Soul to Soul tour.
Okay.
So I literally went from doing...
What'd you do in that tour?
I was, the sixth audio guy.
Okay.
So I was... Well, actually, there was more to it than that, but I literally went from 1 month I'm in DC, trying my best to work a podium mic for some politician that's speaking on the, steps of the Capitol. The next month I'm working in a shop in Nashville, and then a month after that I'm on an 18-truck tour with Tim McGraw and Faith Hill. And so for me, at that time I was 29 years old, 28 years old, 29 years old.
Okay. Uh-oh, you're dating yourself now.
I am. So for me, it was kind of a whirlwind at first to like, all right, what the heck's going on?
Yeah.
I found myself on that Faith Hill, Tim McGraw tour, and that was an incredible experience. All of the audio team out there were so awesome with the new guy. I mean, they hazed me appropriately, but they also were so generous with their knowledge and tips on not just how to do audio at this level, but also how to survive on a bus.
Yeah.
Etiquette and how to properly just behave with other people around you on tour. And I'm eternally grateful for all those comrades that were on that bus with me. My primary task on that tour was being the tech for the front of house engineer for Faith Hill, a gentleman by the name of Buford Jones. Legend.
Yeah. The
legend Buford Jones.
Wow.
And that was an exciting time, and also just an awesome human being.
Just to be under his wing.
Yeah. To be under his wing was a glorious thing.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from him, especially in that first year of doing this at this level. I was like a sponge, just absorbing all this brand new information and, being tossed into this world that, prior to I knew about, but never was involved with.
What would you say is your biggest takeaway from him? What's the best advice that he gave you?
Reverb.
Okay. Explain.
He used one reverb for the whole band.
The whole band?
Whole band. The AMS, I can't remember the model number.
Okay.
Big black unit, or double space black unit with silver knobs and keypad on it, old red LCD readout. And I remember asking him, Mr. Jones, why are you using just one reverb? And he's smoking a cigar. Well, what's the point of a reverb? You want it to make it sound like they're in some kind of space. Well, they're all in the same space. I was using the same reverb. Like, God dang, that makes too much sense. So that was one of the long-lasting things I really learned from him.
So from that tour you went on, I'm assuming, doing more tours?
Yes, doing more tours. So there I was primarily, Buford was my charge out there and taking care of him, in addition to flying PA and doing all the other tasks that are required. Then the following year, I was out on Backstreet Boys.
Oh, cool.
Which was also a monstrous tour.
Yeah, in their prime.
In their prime, in 2001.
Wow.
That was a huge, huge tour. I think it was 20 plus trucks, a crew of, 1,800 or something like that. It was just, maybe not 1,800, but might as well have been.
Yeah.
Got to tour an incredible place. That was my first time getting to work down in South America. Got to go to Japan through that tour.
Wow.
And there also, I was primarily teching for the front of house engineer.
Okay.
We went through two. The first guy, his name was Tim Lemoy.
Okay.
May rest in peace. Beautiful human being. Love him to death. Actually lived with him when I first moved to Nashville.
Wow.
We were roommates. We lived in a house where there was 4 of us audio guys. So it was a halfway house for wayward audio nerds. And so got to work with TL. And that was also super exciting from an audio point of view. We hung 2 PAs every day. It would be a line array stripe that had just the vocals, a double stripe of subs, and then a stripe that had just the band mix in it. And we hung that on both sides. So we had a separate PA for the vocals and a separate.
I've never heard of that.
There might be reason for that, but
wow.
So that was also, a thing.
Okay.
I was
so you've done quite a few tours before for this one. What's been your favorite tour and your least favorite tour leading up to this?
Leading up to this, one of my favorite tours was with this rock band known as Rise Against.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Oh yeah.
I had such a hoot with those guys. For several reasons, mainly because they were also just great guys in the band. Also, that crew was just full of super awesome human beings. But musically also, I found it exhilarating and interesting. So much so that I spent my own money to buy their music. If that's not endorsement, I don't know what is, because I don't buy music. But I bought their music. And even to this day, I fully enjoy listening to their stuff, because it was powerful, high energy, solid, verge of punk. Not full on punk, not Washington D.C. mid '80s style punk, but it was for that era very punk.
Great band.
Lyrically, I thought it was so well written. The lyrics in their music were awesome, or are awesome. Is awesome. Were all of those. All of those.
What would you say is your least favorite, or if you don't want to answer, least favorite hardest tour?
Well, I'm not going to give the name of the artist, but it was a tour where the majority of the other roadies they just all thought of themselves as super cool rock and roll roadies.
Yeah.
And I got bored of that very quickly.
Sure.
And there was just a little bit of that attitude that I just didn't agree with it. And it just rubbed me the wrong way. Or it might have been, it was just not the right tour for me.
Yeah.
And it was, It was just not the best time
Yeah.
for me. And,
Yeah.
but that happens. And, the shows themselves were fine. The workload was fine. That's the only reason I
Yeah.
really didn't like it
Yeah.
was because of that.
Yeah.
Sure, there have been tours and events and shows I've done where the music isn't really my cup of tea, but
Sure.
it's never made me have any disdain for the tour.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't like this stuff.
Yeah.
I'll not listen to it. I'll just sit over there and I don't have to actively listen to it.
It's still a job at this
Yes.
point. It's been cool walking around with you today, and your experience, especially time that you've spent, your tenure, may I say,
Mhm.
being a systems engineer, and you told me this is your first headline front of house tour.
Yeah.
And it's been really impressive just to see your knowledge and your tenure through this and that translates into how you talk to people, the information that you give to people, and even the equipment that you use for it. So it's been really cool to see this, and I'm honored to even be here talking with you with it. One of the things I wanted to kind of highlight is this. What is this thing with all this? Like, I don't know what is it. There's any of these. There's no touch screens here.
No, there aren't. I had those removed surgically.
So tell me about this console. Why you chose this console? I'm sure you've used digital desks in your career at some point.
Of course.
But why for your first headline tour? Why this one?
I would say that.
What is it at first for them? I know that.
First of all, this is a product by a company called Midas.
Yep.
It is their. They have a golden touch, from what I hear. This is one of their most historically known consoles, the XL4.
Mm-hmm.
This console has had, not this console specifically, but this model console has had some of the most incredible music come through it known to man.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
Some would say it was in their prime, but
some would say that.
At least in analog.
So, just at the time, standard 48 channel analog desk. By today's standards, limited as far as how much it can receive and send. At the time, hugely innovative.
What is your favorite and least favorite aspect of this console?
My favorite aspect would be the tonal quality of it. There's, with an analog console, there just seems to be, at least from my experience, just a better separation of things, a more formidable stereo image. And I think that's very noticeable in an analog console. There's an aspect to the mic pre's, like there's a couple of my inputs where they're spitting blood all night long. I mean, every kick drum, every snare drum hit, it's red.
Okay.
And it sounds right to me.
Yeah.
I think it sounds right. You might have a different opinion about it after the show. You might say,
sounds great.
Arpad, what the? So, you can run these things hot or cold, depending on the input, depending on your show. And it's going to add character. It's going to add these even and or odd order harmonics. And I'm going to use all these fancy words like that, and technical mumbo jumbo and thermal distortions.
The nerds will love it.
The nerds will love it.
They will.
There's just something about the mic pre's on these where it's almost like this phantom-like tone knob or something, depending on how you gas it or not gas it.
How many of these are you, how many channels are you actually driving pretty hard?
There's about 5 channels that I drive fairly hard.
Okay.
The rest of them, they're just,
all drum channels?
No.
Drum and bass?
Maybe.
Okay. Okay. How many inputs are you running for this show?
The show itself our genuine band inputs are 26 or 28.
Okay.
But then we have some spares, some backups, guest inputs and stuff like that. So this is a 48 channel. I don't even have that full. So we're at 40 on this desk of holes actually being used. Now, the reason I chose to go with an analog desk, specifically the Midas, I spent a lot of time prior to this working with John and Martina McBride, getting to tour with them, and that was also a huge blessing. Those people were great. Martina McBride one of the most talented singers, if not the most talented singer alive today, without a doubt. And it was an honor just to get to hear her sing every night. And her husband, John, who mixes front of house for her, just world-class guy,
Yeah.
has been doing it. He's, historically just a legend in
Yeah.
audio world. And he mixed on an analog desk, a Paragon. So I just became so accustomed to the analog sound and the analog workings and just that workflow even, that I always thought like, well, if I ever get a chance to mix, I'm gonna do whatever I can to keep as much of it as I can in the world of analog.
Yeah.
And thankfully, that's where I ended up. So
So what had happened here
what
was
happened
in
was
tour, stuff doesn't go perfect every time. So
Right.
you take a pause for a second. So
you need to take
I believe
a
we're
pause.
talking about your console.
Yes.
This beautiful console.
Beautiful console. I
Yes.
was talking about how a result of working with John and Martina McBride for as long as I did, John is a diehard, hardcore analog fanatic. I mean, to a fault. And I gained a huge appreciation for analog because of it. His tutelage, working with him, just knowing, the beauty of what analog can do and how it sounds. When I took breaks from the Martina tour to work on other projects, other tours, other festivals, or what have you, and found myself in a digital world, I could immediately hear the differences. So I was just like, man, well, hell, John was right. That's so weird.
Yeah.
And not that it was weird, but I was just like, okay, there's genuinely something to it. It's not just all folklore and smoke and mirrors. There's something genuine about that. So I decided that, should I fall into a position where I can make choices about gear and such, that I'd do what I could to stay in the analog world. Then this opportunity fell into my lap, getting to work and mix for Chris Stapleton. And I don't know how much you and the people watching this video are familiar with his music, but it does have a vibe to it, a style, a sound, a je ne sais quoi to it that I felt like, it would only be appropriate to do it, to keep it analog. Vance Powell, who engineered their albums, I know his work ethic and the gear choices he kind of likes to use. And knowing that, I was like, okay, I got to do what I can to keep that tradition of tone that Chris has and feel out here in the live world. And then also, since the input count is as low as it is, I didn't need the utility of a digital console that can manage, the huge number of inputs that they can. I knew that, a 48 channel desk would be adequate to keep all that in order. And so, the analog world was just, a logical choice for those reasons. And then this desk specifically was, Midas is just known for what it does, for its tone, for its EQ section. It works great. It sounds very nice. And I've been happy with it for, I've been using this since 2017. So
I have noticed that thread with everything you've done with the je ne sais quoi, or the ode to analog, and you've done that throughout everything here. You have very little RF. You have very little ones and zeros with anything, and even the intentionality of mics and mic placement and how you do that. Can you walk us through a little bit about the microphone choices that you've done, the placement, specifically with your drums and your toms? I think that's really cool that you did that too.
Microphone choices. Well, the drum mics have gone through a couple of iterations since I started. Initially, had 57s on the snare, top and bottom.
Classic.
Classic. Had a Neumann Oh, I wish I could remember the model number. The little pencil condenser.
Mhm.
It has a 1 and an 8.
184,
Maybe a 4 in it.
182, 184.
One of
Yeah.
those, yes. The
Yep.
little guy
Yep.
on the hi-hat. And then for toms, tried a couple of things. I can't even remember most of them, to be honest with you. At one point, we settled on the SE tom mics, the V beats is what they're called. And those were also really good mics. And at that time, initially, we were traditionally miking the snare on the top and bottom as you normally would, and the toms were mic'd from the top, or on the top heads, and the hi-hat also mic'd from the top. On the ride, I had a SM7 to start with, and I still have 414s to this day as overheads. Between me and the drummer and the drum tech, we got to a point where the bottom heads of the toms were removed, and that gave me the opportunity to mic from inside the toms, which is something I really wanted to do, because if we're going, a little bit of that, I hate using that phrase old school, but that old school vibe and sound, that was something that was done pretty much on the regular. So when our drummer Derek Mixon decided that to get the tones he wanted on stage, removing the bottom heads was going to be part of that. I said, all right, let's mic those from the inside. So we moved the SC mics to the inside. We used Kelly shoes to suspend them inside the drum. So our drummer has full reign of moving stuff around without affecting mic placement. I mean, the mic is moving, but it's also moving in relation to the drum.
Yeah.
So it doesn't change that relationship. And he was very comfortable with having them mounted that way, because the Kelly shoe doesn't seem to affect the drum sound. Like before, when I was miking from the top, I had the mics on stands, not clipped to the rim or anything, because he could hear a difference with that mass mounted to the drum in that fashion. So I'm like, cool, if you're hearing that, I'm hearing that. So we won't be doing that. But the Kelly shoe,
I like that. If you're hearing that, I'm hearing that.
Yeah. So the Kelly shoe eliminates that problem, at least to a degree where it's not noticeable. Neither Derek, the drummer, nor I noticed, having that thing suspended in there on those little elastic bands doesn't seem to choke the drum at all. And with those SE mics, we were getting really good results, mic from the inside. Then the gentleman who represents DPA microphones in Nashville, Paul Andrews, and I got together, and he spent a lot of time with me, showing me the way of the DPA microphones. And he was so generous also with just his knowledge and showing me how to best utilize these mics. And I was very, very impressed, so much so that I changed all my drum mics, with the exception of my overheads and kick drum mic. So now on the snare top and the 3 toms, I have one of their newer mics, the 2012, which is the predecessor to their 2011, which is a small little pencil condenser. And on the snare bottom and ride, I'm using their 4099, which is their little fuzzball like that. That's got a little gooseneck, and then it's got this big XLR thing that always seems to be weighing things down, and with the XLR on it, so you got to manipulate it a little bit to get it where you want it. But it's so worth the effort, and it's not even that much effort. I'm just bitching about stuff I don't need to bitch about. But those 421s, I was so, or 2012s, not 421s, 20. All these numbers, a different microphone. These 2012s on the snare, especially on the snare, but also on the toms, the way the drums came alive, I was just like, gosh darn it, that's it. That is the bee's knees right there.
Yep.
So that's kind of how the drum sound and drum miking thing has come about. Derek, much like everybody else in the band is so conscientious about their tone. They take such care about how things sound. They're so passionate about how things sound that I know that my sources are going to be rock solid.
Yeah.
Everything, the drums, bass, every input, everybody is so mindful of what they're doing, and it really pays off, and it makes things sound good. I mean,
Right source and right microphone goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Long
We all know that, and we all tend to forget that, even though we say it all the time. But here it is so purposefully implemented, that kind of mentality.
Yeah. Well, can you walk me through your setup back there? You got a lot of analog there. There's a couple questions I have about a few things, specifically on the top left there.
This is my RTA mic. Squawk. Is this what you're referring to?
No. Oh,
the Stryter.
Yes, the Stryter. Explain the Stryter, please.
Well, when I first started with Chris, I was tuning the PA using vinyl. I had a turntable out here.
Wait, I'm sorry. Is this a joke?
No.
You were really doing vinyl?
I was tuning the PA with vinyl. And it was unbelievable. I mean, you know,
I've never heard of anybody doing that.
High quality CDs sound great. I was using vinyl. Specifically, I was using Queen's Greatest Hits.
That's fantastic.
And Toto.
Okay.
Because Heart, Dreamboat Annie.
Okay.
Those albums, just to me, just the way they're recording, they're so lush, so fat, so thick, and gooey, and analog, and just crispy, and more, all of that. And I was getting really good results. However, as you can imagine, it became very impractical to carry around a turntable and styluses and keeping the vinyl in good working condition. So I resorted to using a CD player.
I'm just trying to picture you at like a festival with all the dust and trying to put the vinyl.
So I resorted to using a CD, and immediately I noticed a difference, like something not quite the same. I mean, as good as CDs are and as high quality of a CD recording as you can get, it's still not the same. And I felt like probably more in my head than anything. I was like, this doesn't sound the same, doesn't sound right. I need to somehow get around this, but still maintain the practicality of a CD versus fucking Technics 1200. And I said, all right, I need how about a better converter of some kind? So Stryter, known for their A to D to D to A converters, I'm coming digitally out of that CD player into the digital in of the Stryter converter, and then out of that, the analog output of the Stryter converter into processors.
And did you notice a difference?
Immediately.
Really?
Immediately.
Man.
And there's two basically types, you know, the red and the green.
Okay. Okay, so I see obviously your CD player, then I see some Rupert Neve down there as well.
That's just inserted on the stereo bus.
Okay.
I really like one of the many aspects I like about the Rupert Neve is the blend control, where you can blend from compressed signal to not compressed signal.
Yep.
So you can manage your volume should you need to, but without totally squashing it and making it all thumpy. Or you can squeeze the heck out of it and get that compressed sound just blended in.
Yeah.
You know, I guess they call it parallel compression. Yeah. But here, you know, instead of eating up more channels or outputs and trying to matrix those to my main output, you know, with a blend knob, you can kind of dial in how much compression, that sound of compression you want added to your mix. And then also adjust it where it's still also managing your volume. Like we played a festival in Canada last week where I had a 95 dB limit at front of house, which is, even for as non-hard rock as Chris's show is, that was kind of like, oof.
Yeah.
I got to really kind of ride the line
Hard
here.
limit, huh?
So I just, set the compressor up where it's keeping, electronically keeping me in check a little bit better than me trying to manage it manually. For whatever that's worth. And also this thing's built like a tank. I know it's going to survive. Also, Rupert and his crew are just so thoughtful about some of the features that they add in here. Some of them are above my knowledge base, but I know, they have different speed controls for attack and release on most compressors. Here, it just has slow, medium, or fast, basically, and it does a bunch of math behind the faceplate for you. Like, hey, listen, you dumb audio guy,
I got you.
We got you. You just do your little mixy thing. We'll figure the hard part out.
I see lakes down there.
The lakes, those are very utilitarian. When we're playing a festival, that's what I go through. So I have my own EQ. When we're playing amphitheaters, that's how we send to the lawn. I have a mix going to our LD so he can stay in time with the show because, it is 120 feet away.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
So we're talking
about the lake.
The lake is just utilitarian stuff.
Yep.
When we're playing festivals and I have to patch into somebody else's PA, that gives me an EQ on the tablet and such. And then we have lines for whether there's a hearing impaired situation in a venue like this, or delays when we're playing an amphitheater, stuff like that. And then also a mix for our LD coming off of my desk. And that has, whatever glorious sounds are coming out of this. In addition to that, all the talkback mics. So that's pretty much what's going on there.
Okay.
Mic pre for the RTA. This is a product called a APB, and that's basically a way to switch between my desk and the opening act desk. Okay. So there's two sets of 4 inputs on the front, and then just whoever wants to play music or do their show or what have you. And it's an easy way to get those consoles integrated to the PA, so they're not running through my desk.
Yeah.
So because heaven forbid, and that way they're going directly to the PA.
Yep.
They do go through my desk, but only so that the opening acts also get their mixes sent to our video world, because the video guys record the shows, and that way they get their left-right mix going to video world.
Got it.
So that's the only reason you see it showing up on my desk as well.
Got it. Now let's get to the good stuff.
The good stuff.
The good stuff. Not that it's not bad stuff. I'm saying that.
Well, we have VSS 901.
Okay. Which you use for?
Which is a dynamic equalizer. And for those that aren't familiar with that means it's like a compressor where once a noise reaches a certain level, the electronics in here start pushing it down or keeping it at a certain level. And that's what a basic compressor does. This one, you can also choose what frequencies get squeezed down.
And use that for?
And I use that on Chris's vocal.
Okay, cool.
Primarily because, his vocal tone is awesome, without a doubt. Lord knows that's what he is known for. Yeah. In a live situation, when he goes full double barrel on that microphone, it can really come at you pretty hard when things are at that volume.
It can project.
It really projects. And so it's just that upper mid-range area, primarily that 800 to 2K kind of area, where I give it a nice little squeeze down. Yeah. So when he does go full throat on that, it's not as overpowering as it would be otherwise. And that's pretty much all it's used for.
Okay. Empirical Labs there.
Empirical Labs, Little Freak. I have that on Mrs. Stapleton's vocal.
Okay.
Just because, she has such an awesome voice. There's such a beautiful quality to her voice, and she sings so delicately that I just need that little bit of extra EQ manipulation to be able to bring her out of the mix before I get into a feedback situation. Yeah. So, I have basically 2 channels worth of EQ, the one on the desk and then this guy. And just to be able to get a little bit more gas out of her, but still maintain her tonal quality because it she adds so much to these songs that I don't want any of it to get lost.
Yeah.
So I just use this to, be able to help facilitate that and, squeeze every little inch I can out of her vocal,
Yep.
basically.
So you have a bunch of 500 series.
Yes, the 500 series, I mean, whoever thought of doing gear in this fashion should be given a Nobel Prize because it is awesome. And so many companies have come up with modules that fit into this chassis. And so you can get all kinds of shit going on in just this 3-rack space device. All of mine are compressors.
Okay, drums mainly?
Well, not really.
Okay, I was just testing you. Good job, you passed. Dang it.
So, I'm going to start from this side and go back that way.
Okay.
We have just generic DBX 560s, which is their 500 version of the ubiquitous DBX 160.
Okay.
And I have that on our 2 MC, RF, spare, DJ, announce mics,
Okay.
guest vocals when sometimes depending on the opening act, Chris will bring the singers out from the opening acts to sing with them, and they're on one of these mics.
Okay.
This is our utility guitarist, Mike.
Okay.
I have that on his acoustic guitar because everybody knows acoustic guitars sound so much better when they're squashed to all hell. No, it's just a mild amount of compression.
Yeah.
He plays so many different things in the show on acoustic. I felt it was just better to kind of let the compressor kind of keep that level a little bit in balance versus chasing the fader around per song. Not that I couldn't be doing that, but this just seems like to be a good way to manage that. On the overheads for the drums, I have them squashed pretty hard. I like the sound and the feel of that initial hit coming down and just it gives the overheads a sustain on it, where as that compressor releases, it just lets the cymbals drag out a little bit more. And then a separate one for the ride cymbal. Bass guitar, also just a very mild amount of compression. There's one song where he kicks in a muff drive, Electro Harmonix muff drive, and the level of that just jumps up so much. It's just a good way to keep that muff sound, and it just cuts right through everything because it's so squashed down with that pedal engaged. It's awesome.
That's cool.
It's awesome, and it's just this fantastic noise, this fuzzy bass guitar just coming at you. It's a lot of fun. Now the snare, there's a bunch of trickery going on with the snare.
Okay.
I have a snare top and bottom.
Okay.
Those are obviously going to the left, right.
Okay.
Then I have those being sent to a group.
Okay.
Actually, it's an aux, not even a group. It's a aux, and that aux has this compressor across it.
Okay.
And then that aux, gets squeezed down a lot. So it just, that typical thwop sound you get from an overly compressed input, and I just blend that into the rest of the snare sound. So it's basically the snare sound is 3 inputs, the top, bottom, and the super squeeze, which is a combination of the top and bottom.
That's cool.
Squeezed together.
That's cool.
I just kind of blend that in, and it just adds that punch. I mean, you heard a little bit of it at our line check. It just adds that thwack to that snare. And, Derek's playing is so nuanced, and there's just so much cool things that he does. This really helps. It helps give a lot of power to the snare, but also it makes it so you hear all the little brush strokes and grace notes that he does. There's a couple of songs where he plays brushes, and you can hear the snares rattling on the bottom and everything. So it's really fun.
That's cool.
It's really cool. It's nothing unusual going on there. Just your typical 4-to-1 ratio, and a pretty high threshold on it. So it's just a little lippity blip over there.
Lippity blip.
Now this guy, there used to be the letter T on there for talk. Now if we go over to the console,
go.
So I have Chris's vocal split into 3 channels: his singing vocal, his talking vocal, and a delay. So the one line comes in and I have a split on it, and that goes between the singing and talking.
Huh.
So when he sings, obviously this is the only one that's hot. When Chris is talking, addressing the crowd between songs, his voice is at a much lower volume, and also there's a lot more low end in it when he's just talking.
Yeah.
For all the reasons. So what I do is that the talking vocal is fully high passed, and it's basically just boosting some high end. It's just adding some high end into his vocal. So when he's talking, there's a lot more articulation because, you know, as I said, it's not as loud as when he's singing, and just bringing up the singing vocal wouldn't achieve the same thing because the singing vocal is so specifically EQ'd up for his singing style and vocal quality that just to bring that up would cause more problems than solve. So adding or splitting his vocal up so there's a talkie channel, I can add that extra high end to it, and that's super squashed because, you know, sometimes he'll be talking to the audience and sometimes he'll yell at the audience, not in an angry way, but in an excited way, and that, you know, keeps it from clipping out. So that's the reason for that. And then the third line, the delay, the direct out of the singing vocal, I have it bounced into the delay, and then the delay channel is not sent to stereo, but it is sent to the aux that goes to my vocal delay. So that way, when he's, you know, there's just a word or a line, I can
like a return.
I could bump it. That's a send.
Or send.
That's a send to the delay. So I could just bump that one word into the delay pedal, and then it comes back with the rest of my effects.
That is cool.
So
I like that.
That is the vocal chain, as it were.
A little secret sauce there.
Little secret sauce. Little bit of secret sauce.
Okay. We got what's above the Transient Design?
Well, this is the ATI Pro 6. And this is basically a channel strip from a Paragon console.
Oh, cool.
Very cool.
Wayne Pauly would love that.
Yes, he would.
Or
just about anybody would love that. This is on the acoustic guitar.
Okay.
The line goes directly into this, and this is where I do my overall EQ for acoustic guitar.
Okay.
Just, you know, cutting some low end, cutting that piezo-y tone out of the pickup a little bit, and that stays put. And since Chris plays 4 different acoustic guitars, each of them characteristically a little different, to keep all of those functioning sound-wise, I address it at the EQ on the desk because it's easier to get to than bending over and using that.
Now, talk to me a little bit about the Transient Designs.
So, are you familiar with that device?
Not really.
Man. All right. Here's the thing.
You take me to school here.
Everybody talks about a magic box.
Okay.
Magic boxes are bullshit. There ain't no such thing as a magic box, right? Oh, this magic box. That's a magic box. I don't know what kind of voodoo, sorcery wizardry is going on in these things. They're awesome. John McBride is the one that introduced me to this.
Okay.
Basically, there's 4 channels. Each one has an attack and a sustain.
Okay.
It's this interesting combination of expansion and compression at the same time. Verbally, it's really hard to describe. It really, really is as to what it does. Can you
do an interpretive dance?
I could, maybe, if you're lucky. Like one way to describe it that I found useful, snare drum. With the sustain knob, you can turn it from a tight piccolo kind of thing. As you increase the sustain, it starts feeling more like a marching band, loose snare, and just adds all that white noise to a snare drum as you increase the sustain.
Okay.
And the attack, you know, it just highlights that initial transient on it or softens it, depending on which way you go with it.
Okay.
So I find that it's a great tool if you have a problem child drum to really tame it down. If, you know, there's a time where regardless of how they tune it, or maybe the drummer just...
So it's a gate without a gate.
It is.
Okay.
But to call it a gate is not representing it correctly. You can increase or minimize the amount of attack. You can increase or minimize the amount of sustain on any input, because as you'll see, I have it on the bass guitar, on the acoustic guitar, and then on all the drums.
Okay.
On the bass guitar, it's a good way to get more note articulation out of a bass guitar without adding high end. Because our bass player, as I mentioned, everybody's so passionate about their tone. I don't want to mess with his tone by adding high end.
Yeah.
I increase the attack by just clicking it a bit, and it just adds that a little bit more articulation, a little more percussiveness when needed to the bass guitar. On the acoustic guitar as well. Chris, he plays on acoustic, he tends to play very close to the bridge, which sometimes can get really bitey and pingy.
Yeah.
So I take down the attack a little bit, and it kind of softens that initial ka-chunk out of the acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
bass. And then with the acoustic guitar, I also have the sustain down just a hair to help minimize any feedback issues there are. When you're playing a big room like this, an acoustic guitar, and there's certain songs where Chris is playing so delicately, just finger picking on songs where I have to gas it a bit more than on the strummy parts, that by pulling the sustain down, I'm also I'm minimizing feedback potential with that. And then, as mentioned with the drums, like on the kick drum, I have nothing done on the attack, but I have to sustain down all the way. So I'm able to, get a good thick kick drum sound, and the potential of feedback is also diminished because this machine, this Transient Designer, kind of pulls back the sustain of the drum. This is a Electro Harmonix Memory Boy analog delay pedal.
Okay.
There's a couple of songs where in the studio recordings there was a delay used.
Okay.
Vance Powell, who's the engineer, was telling me how they used a tape delay in the studio. And he said, Arpad, you should take a tape delay out with you. And then maybe some extra tubes and a couple rolls of tape and maybe an extra machine. I'm like, Vance, I don't think that's gonna be very practical. So I said, all right, I gotta find a delay pedal that is nice and grungy sounding and analog chipped, and that's what this has. And also, very importantly, unlike a lot of guitar effects pedals, when you spin the blend or mix knob all the way, there's still original signal coming through the output. On this one, the blend knob is 100% delay, so that way I can treat it like an effect, like your traditional outboard effects units.
Yeah.
So when the delay's in use, there's no actual drive signal coming out of it as well. It's all delay. So, and it just sounds great, and it has that gnarliness that you expect out of analog delays and such. And it sounds correct for this show.
Can you walk me through your sound check process?
Yeah. I start out by just playing or running some pink noise to the rig. I know the basic shape of the curve I'm looking for with pink noise. Since we're touring with full production in our own PA, it's very consistent as to what I need to change. But at a festival where I'm on a different PA or whatever the situation is, and we're not on our PA, I can still listen to pink noise, and I'm like, all right, I need to achieve this curve to start with to get the combination of instrument, microphone, console, outboard gear to sound like our show. So bring up pink noise, bring down what I feel is, obtrusive. With pink noise, on the RTA, I can kind of see sometimes when there are anomalies in the room that need to be addressed. Those get addressed initially. Then, once I do that initial EQ with the pink noise, then we go into time alignment, where I take the microphone in front of the subs, or kind of not equidistant, but somewhere where it's getting subs in the mains on one side, and just time align the subs and mains together using the trace function or transfer function. And then I move that microphone up to the side where it's seeing about 60% side hang and 40% main hang, and time align the side hang to the main. And that's all I do for time alignment as far as with the RTA. And the front fills I time align by ear, where, we have roughed in just, what we found to be when we first, got into production rehearsals. I said, oh, okay, this sounds right. And we kind of saved that as part of our start file. And then, in arenas, it's very consistent, our distance from the front fills to the main. So there's almost no change in that. But if there is a change, I just have the wireless tablet with me, and I just move the delay up and down until I hear the image, not coming directly from that front fill, but kind of you can, as you increase the delay time, so the sound coming out of that speaker that's closer to you is coming later and later, you hear the image of that sound starting creeping up. And then I just kind of set it where it's like, where it feels like it's coming from at the stage height, not at front fill height. And I just close my eyes and move that delay, and you could just hear it go whoop.
That's so cool.
It's very cool. It's fun to do. Sometimes I just sit there and play with it all day. So I do that, and then I come back, and then I play my tuning songs.
Which are?
One is a song by an artist by the name of Michael Ruff.
Okay. Called
Wishing Well.
Okay.
Great natural sounding recording, great piano sound, great snare drum sound. And, that's my bass line. If I only had one song to use, it would be that one, because it does cover all the bases that are essential. And, it gives me a good idea of just where things are sitting. If it's a boomy room, then, the kick drum will start floating around too much. Or if there's a weird reflection, it'll be primarily on the snare drum that you'll hear it bouncing back in a weird way. And then that gets addressed. Next song is No Doubt, Hella Good, I think is the name of that song. Yep. That song is great because it has a lot of exaggerated low end and some hyped up high end. So if I can keep those things kind of tamed, then I, that, when pushing the rig, it's not going to get too brittle. Granted, the cohesion rig is so consistent across volume levels that doesn't really tend to be a problem. Yeah. But, it's a safety measure, if you will. Just like, all right, if I can tame the high end in that song, if the high end sounds pleasant on that song, then the high end is going to be pleasant. I know that. And then the exaggerated low end just also gives me a good judge of like, all right, where are we and what are we capable of low end wise when it comes to the big, heavy, thumpy rockin' songs in the show. And then I go to Bad Mama Jamma, which is an awesome song. And that's just a fun song to listen to while I walk the room, listen for coverage. The Clare Brothers PA has a wonderful shading overlay that you can add to different boxes. So just making sure that what we did on the computer and what our prediction software told us to do is actually working. Yeah. Make adjustments as needed. Check for low end, how it is not coupling, how much, if any, of a power alley is, being dealt with or exasperated. Sometimes depending on how the seats are sloped, or, if there's an underhang, or if there's a weird corner thing, that low end can build up in weird ways, regardless of what you're doing down here. So, kind of walk around and just listen for that. Then I come back to front of house and I listen to the first part of Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd, just because that acoustic guitar is just so perfectly recorded. And it's just one more final gauge of like tonality of things. And then I listen to the inputs off stage. We have a great backline crew. All of them are such wonderful musicians, and they have really nailed a couple of Chris's songs where when they play them, it's so wonderful because I can really get a sense of like what the show is going to sound like with, live instruments, live mics on stage, and the guys play them so well that, it's just immensely helpful. Yeah. I mean, to be blessed with a crew like that can pull that off, it's like, it makes our job so easy. And it also just adds a level of comfort for Chris and the rest of the band, because they know that, all right, our backline guys who are on top of it have been out there and they've checked it and they know what we need and what we like. and they know what the room is doing. We have confidence in them. And so as a result, they can come out on stage, knowing that it's going to be as good as it can be, or it's going to rock. Everybody has put in maximum effort, and it makes for a fun show, ultimately.
Yeah.
And if Chris is having a good time and he's feeling it and excited about what's going on, everybody has a good show. So that's what we ultimately strive for. If he's bummed out about something, everybody's going to be bummed out about something. So we have to mitigate the bumminess.
Yeah, no bumminess. What PA are you using?
We're using a Claire Global, no longer Claire Brothers, a Claire Global product known as the Cohesion 12 system.
Okay.
And I think it's a marvelous PA. It from beginning to finish. I mean, loading it in, flying the PA is so easy, so safe to do. I've contended with other PAs where it always felt like I had the potential of hurting my fingers in some fashion with different mechanisms coming and going. It might have been just my inexperience with them. More likely that is the case. But they just never felt I never felt as confident as with this PA, because this PA is so slick and so thought out. The engineers at Claire Brothers, they just have put so much effort into making it as simple for us dumb roadies to put together every day, and to be safe about it, most importantly. That I love flying this PA. It goes up so easy, so fast. When you need to make adjustments, it's very simple to do. Works great, and it covers so well. I mean, we're doing 16 boxes on the mains and 12 boxes on the side hang, and it's covering magnificently here. The horizontal coverage, they have 80-degree boxes and 120-degree boxes, and they are true to those numbers. EQing it, there's not much. I mean, some people might think it's a lot. That's what's done. And this, all this high end that's cut on this, that's not a fault of the PA. It's more a fact of the combination of our inputs, the mic choices, the console. It just seems to highlight the high end of a lot of things. So, just bringing this down, it seems like the way to approach that.
What advice would you give to young people who want to be sitting where you sit one day? And I guess with that, what do you feel like separates the good from the greats with it?
Be patient. So much of, at least with my story and how I got involved with Chris, was a matter of timing. It just worked out where this slot opened up just as I was not working, as it were. Not that Claire Brothers didn't have work for me, it just was in a period of downtime.
Yeah.
And I got a call like, hey, Arpad, how would you like to be the front of house engineer for Chris Stapleton? And that's a phone call that, lots of guys hope for.
Yeah.
And I was the one that was lucky enough to get it.
Yeah.
And I'm eternally grateful for that phone call and how that all worked out. So, just always, the best advice I can give people is, make yourself known, work to the best of your capabilities, know your gear, listen critically. Everybody knows what sounds good. Everybody in this building knows what sounds good. The only difference between that person sitting there and me is that I possess the vocabulary to describe why it sounds the way it does. I possess the tools to, like, if it doesn't sound good, I know what it might take to change it to make it sound good. That person over there knows what sounds good. They just might not have the words or tools to make it better or describe why it is good. So, understand your gear, understand what all these knobs and buttons do. Experiment with it. Mess up a bunch of times. Try stuff. It's like, oh, wow, that really doesn't work. That really, really doesn't work.
Yeah.
As much as I thought it would work in my head, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Be willing to do, the menial tasks when you're just starting out. Not that, I shouldn't say menial tasks, but, when you're first starting out, you're not going to more than likely you're not going to get a mixing position. Hopefully we'll get to work with people that are as gracious as they were with me in my embryonic stages of my career, as far as showing you what's going on, giving you the secrets or giving you their secrets, their tricks, their mojo or what have you. As I was telling one of our opening acts, when you're tuning a system, use a song that you know. When you're EQing a rig, that's so much of the battle. Is getting the desk dialed in is one thing, but if the PA isn't right for your show, you're going to just be struggling the whole time. So hone your skills on how to tune a PA. Get a handful of songs that you've listened to on all kinds of sound systems. And it's not as easily done as it is for me to say, because, the songs I use, I've been using for 30 years or so. For whatever reason, they're the ones that fell into my arsenal of tools. And that, especially that Wishing Well song, I've heard it on every PA on the planet. Well, not on the planet, but I've heard it on every type of PA pretty much, in every club scenario, churches, festivals, indoor, outdoor shows, house of blues, opera halls, car stereos, every shitty pair of headphones you can come up with. And so I just know what that song sounds like, every nuance of it. So if something's out of place, I can easily find it and address it. And the song doesn't have to be the most well-recorded song. I'm not saying that's a detriment, but I'm just saying it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
It just needs to be something you're so familiar with, that every little hi-hat hit, every little squeaky guitar string thing in that song. And you can recognize the song from the first nanosecond it starts playing.
Yeah.
I think that is vital, because once you get to that relationship with that song, then tuning a PA becomes that much easier, because you can get the PA to make your tuning song sound the way it needs to.
Yeah.
So that is a key element, I think, to all of this. All the other gear is cool and you can experiment with. Keeping it as simple as possible, I tend to find to be the better choice. Not that some people would say this is more than it needs to be. Some people would say, why don't you have 5 more compressors? Wayne Pauley is a great example of that. All of his EQ channels are totally flat, a little high pass, and here we go.
Yeah.
And that comes from just dedication to the source and the microphone choice and the microphone placement.
Yeah.
Those 3 things right there are so much of the battle. I'm blessed with a bunch of guys on stage that are tone nerds, and they are willing to experiment. So I'm willing to experiment as well. I love experimenting with this stuff. Try different mics. If something's not working, maybe, have a discussion with the guitar player. Say, hey, I understand that, you like how it sounds here. It's not translating out there. What can we do to address it? Maybe, can we put your amp in a different spot before we start turning knobs? That can sometimes be a better solution. And, if that's not working, go to a different microphone. Take that same mic and just start moving it around and do your best to kind of gauge, like, oh, how different does it sound on the dust cap versus at the edge of the cone? And, try and listen for what changes there are while moving that mic around and see what works.
Yeah.
What's representing that guitar sound the best through the PA.
Yeah.
And same thing with every other input. The snare mics the snare mic that I'm using, that 2012, it's so sensitive to how it's pointed at the, what do they call it? Drum head.
What's that thing you beat on?
The thing you hit with a stick. It's so sensitive to where it's pointed, whether I have it pointed more towards the middle or towards the edge. It picks up those differences, and you can use that to your advantage. If you want it to be a bigger, boomier sound, you point it at one spot. If you want a more cracky, edgy sound, you point it at a different spot on the drum head. So, those things need to be messed around with to really see what it is that's making the sounds and why they're making those sounds. So little stuff like that.
I love it. Well, I know I've taken up a ton of your time.
Not at
Doors
all.
are already open with this. Thank you so much.
Nick, it's
I
been my
really
pleasure,
appreciate
man.
you. Thank you for opening up your camp to me, and
Of course.
looking forward to hearing some of the show.
What's that?
Looking forward to hearing some of the show.
Huh?
Huh?
Awesome, my man.
Thank you so much, brother.
Appreciate
I
it,
appreciate
man.
you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you.